In the late 1990s and early 2000s, an entire generation's cultural intake was routed through a single cable channel. Every afternoon, millions of kids sat in front of their televisions, captivated by the green slime and high-energy comedy of Nickelodeon. The network presented a perfectly manicured image to parents and advertisers. It sold itself as a kids' utopia, a vibrant, empowering space where children were the stars, winning orange blimps and calling the shots. Adult authority behind the soundstage doors operated with very little transparency. Producers and executives maintained a closed environment, functioning far removed from the public eye and direct parental oversight. The pressure to sustain a multi-billion-dollar youth monopoly incentivized the network to prioritize its highest-earning creators. This structure allowed problematic workplace conditions to be buried beneath the marketed image of a childhood dream. As the channel transitioned from a quirky underdog to a media powerhouse, its infrastructure expanded into massive physical footprints, like the Nickelodeon on Sunset Studios in Hollywood. The primary architect of this massive commercial dominance was producer Dan Schneider. His production company, Schneider's Bakery, quickly became the engine driving the network's viewership and cultural relevance. He created and ran a relentless string of hits, from the early sketch comedy of All That and The Amanda Show to the massive sitcom success of Drake and Josh, Zoey 101, and iCarly. Because these programs generated extraordinary ratings and merchandise sales, Schneider accumulated immense leverage. He operated with a level of independence that isolated him from standard corporate human resources protocols and traditional executive oversight. When a single creator generates billions, the institutional instinct is to protect that revenue. In this environment, the children working deep inside the machine were left without the protection they were promised. Evidence of a troubled environment appeared as early as the 2000s, when writers Jenny Kilgan and Christy Stratton filed lawsuits against Schneider for gender discrimination. Their complaints detailed illegal practices, like forcing two female writers to share a single salary. They also recounted a hostile writer's room environment, where women were pressured into performing humiliating acts for the staff's amusement. The hostility extended to the young talent. Former iCarly and Sam and Cat star Jeanette McCurdy documented in her memoir the intense psychological toll of navigating this environment, noting instances of emotional abuse and being pressured to drink alcohol while underage. Upon her departure, the network offered McCurdy $300,000 to sign a non-disclosure agreement, money she publicly rejected, viewing it as a clear attempt to buy her silence regarding the creator's behavior. Nickelodeon relied on financial settlements and strict confidentiality clauses to contain these issues. This strategy suggests the corporation was aware of the toxicity well before it reached the public. The unchecked authority behind the camera eventually began to surface in the actual content broadcast to millions of children. Viewers revisiting old episodes have pointed out numerous bizarre segments where young actors, like Ariana Grande on Victorious, were written into suggestive situations, such as attempting to juice a potato in bed or pouring water on themselves while upside down. Off-camera, the power dynamics were equally unsettling. Crew members recounted Schneider routinely demanding back and neck massages from female staff members during production. Instead of intervening, executives and set personnel often brushed off these demands as the eccentric, albeit uncomfortable, quirks of a creative hitmaker. By constantly pushing boundaries and normalizing an uncomfortable workplace, the culture on these sets became desensitized. It created a blind spot large enough for true predators to embed themselves in the production. While executives tolerated the volatile behavior of their star producer, individuals with far darker intentions were granted direct, unsupervised access to vulnerable child actors. In 2003, Brian Peck, a dialogue coach who worked closely with the kids on All That and The Amanda Show, was arrested. He was convicted of lewd acts with a minor and sentenced to 16 months in prison. For 2 decades, the identity of his victim remained sealed in court documents as John Doe. But in the Quiet on Set documentary, former Nickelodeon star Drake Bell finally broke his silence, detailing the extensive abuse he suffered at Peck's hands. This diagram illustrates the response from the entertainment community during the trial. Instead of distancing themselves, dozens of prominent Hollywood actors, directors, and producers wrote character letters directly to the judge, pleading for leniency on Peck's behalf. This network of support for Peck revealed a systemic culture that prioritized professional and social alliances over the safety of the children on set. Industry loyalty effectively functioned as a shield for a convicted predator. It took the momentum of #MeToo in 2018 for Nickelodeon to finally part ways with Dan Schneider, following an internal investigation by its parent company, Viacom. The investigation confirmed a history of severe verbal abuse and tantrums, but reported no evidence of sexual misconduct. This precise framing allowed the network to cut ties while executing a relatively clean public relations exit. Years later, following the release of Quiet on Set, Schneider posted a polished video apologizing for his workplace behavior and his demands for massages. Shortly after, he took a different stance, filing a defamation lawsuit against the documentary's producers. Meanwhile, Nickelodeon issued corporate statements, asserting they investigate all formal complaints, but claiming they cannot corroborate allegations from productions that happened decades ago. These institutional responses follow a predictable playbook. They prioritize legal liability and brand equity over the needs of the survivors. Despite the corporate deflections, surviving child stars are now speaking openly. Actors who grew up on these sets are publicly reprocessing their experiences and taking control of their own narratives. They are laying out specific demands for reform. One primary push is for mandatory, independent therapists to be present on sets, ensuring young performers have a safe outlet away from directors and network executives. Public pressure and the recent willingness to ignore non-disclosure agreements have dismantled the secrecy that shielded these productions for decades. Acknowledging the past is only the first step. True reform requires permanently tearing down the unregulated silos of child stardom, guaranteeing that a child's psychological well-being is never again traded for family entertainment.